Welcome back to the Stream of Bhakti channel, and we are now in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I'm here with Brihat again in the 11th canto, or no, sorry, the 11th chapter of the first canto. It's a great book. It's got everything that we can know about Bhakti, like all the teachings of Bhakti, if one wants to understand them, are found in the Srimad Bhagavatam, but it's a bit of a long read. How long does it take to read the Bhagavatam, Brihat?
If you we had a friend, if you read a lot every day, takes like a year.
Yeah.
But that's if you're reading a lot every day. Let's see. I have read the whole thing and I'm trying to remember how long it took me. I mean, like definitely 2 or 3 years. And I was
Mhm.
dedicating a good amount of time to reading.
Yeah. Our friend Savitri in Halifax, she reads like about an hour a day, chapter a day, or an hour a day, something like that. And she goes through the whole Bhagavatam in about a year.
Yeah.
She's gone through it 13 or 14 times. And when we were living in the ashram, we would have one class on one verse every morning, typically, right?
Right, right, right.
So I went through the Bhagavatam in that way. Also, it took about 10 years to go through
Right,
one verse a day.
right.
Actually, it didn't we didn't make it all the way through. That was like 10th canto.
Okay, okay.
Um, so just it's a large it's a big read, and it seems like kind of daunting, like it's just so much to read, but you just start and it just you know it just happens
Yeah.
little bit, and all the pieces start to come together. We've been doing this. We started with Ani. I think it was around this. It was around this time last year. So we're at about a year now. We're only in chapter 11 of the first canto, and there's 12 cantos. So it takes some time. Uh, so where were we last week?
We just left off at the text 25, and the what I remember where we left off was it's mentioning there how the residents of Dwarka, when they saw Krishna, like uh they weren't Krishna is so beautiful that they were never satiated by seeing him. Like it was always like fresh. And
Mm,
what I remember where we left off was it's this same thing hearing about it, is it becomes like, uh, um, it's always, yeah, it becomes like, uh, um, juicier is not the, not quite the most refined word to use, but the satisfaction one gets out of it increases. So even hearing about it, what to speak of, we're hearing about the residents of Dwarka, and that's the I'm just thinking that's the nature of developing a relationship or studying the absolute truth, is that it's never satiating. It's always like, and people have been doing it since the beginning of time, studying the absolute truth and getting new realizations, and always like it doesn't. It's not a subject matter that becomes old.
Yeah, and we talked about that last week a bit too, how we can see that in the practice of chanting. It's like when
Right.
we're chanting,
Right.
it's not like we get uh I'm not I've already done this. Time to
Yes.
do something else.
Right. Right. It's the absolute is unlimited. That's the description of the absolute, is that the absolute is unlimited, so there's no
Mhm.
end to discover. There's always more to discover.
So when we get into the hearing, though, like there's kind of, I think, a few, I don't know what you'd call it, like we to get accustomed to this kind of hearing. Like what we're going to hear now is, Krishna's going to come into Dwarka, and we're going to get a little glimpse of some of his very personal exchanges that he has.
Right.
And so there's a number of things here. One is that, uh, like philosophically, it could be like really different, like or like unexpected, or just something that's maybe we haven't heard before or thought about, and like the personal nature of the things that are going to be described. That's really nice to talk about and to contemplate. But also, all of this is taking place during a time of the Vedic culture. So we're also hearing about a culture that's not present anymore. So there are the way that society was organized, the way that men and women related to each other, all kinds of different things that are not current in our modern society. So when we read about this, we have to keep in mind that we're peering into an ancient culture.
Right.
And that so some of the things, I'm just saying this now, and this is like relevant throughout the Bhagavatam, that it's not, the Bhagavatam is not exactly the purpose isn't that society should look exactly like it looks in the Bhagavatam and the present. Like it's not, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Like everything that's going on in the Bhagavatam is a description of an ancient culture with a whole structure based on principles that have kind of transformed in this age. And so the goal of Bhakti and the goal of the Bhagavatam isn't to make the world look like 5,000 of years ago in the Vedic times. And that's not so the point is to not get distracted by cultural nuances that are there, but actually just to appreciate them, because by being able to just enter into that time, like kind of just like a time machine, we just like zip ourselves back into a different era and appreciate that era for what it is, and the beauty is in it, the beauty that's there.
Mm-hmm,
Not to impose our current like modern values or the way that society is organized today, not to kind of like superimpose all that on the Bhagavatam or expect it to be like what it looks like today. Does it make any sense?
Yeah, I was also thinking one thing that helps me is that the real purpose of the Bhagavatam is for spiritual, realization and spiritual development of the individual. And so sometimes there are things that come up that, I don't understand, because like you're saying, culturally, it's just like totally a different thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when I come across those things, then I try to approach it in the mentality that I don't understand what's going on here, but I know that the purpose behind all of this is for spiritual realization. So even though I don't understand it, there may be some good reason for it. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. So I try not to get, as you said, distracted by those things, and get too caught up, because it's sometimes it's just like, yeah, it's I don't have the capacity to wrap my mind around certain details and concepts.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's a pretty good preamble for what we're about to read. That was a pretty good kind of just warm up. I think I'm noticing that the camera is stuck on you, the video. So I just thought I'd acknowledge that. And so you're the star today, Brihat. Somehow the Zoom is just stuck on your picture. And we're just going to be looking at you the whole time. My voice is, unless I'm wrong, I think the camera.
It looks to me that the
it's going back and
I have the gallery view going on. I can see the highlight.
It is going back and forth.
Okay.
Okay, it says my screen.
That's really good, because it would be a really poor episode if people had to look at me the whole time.
You and your glowing green background. Yeah, it's great. Okay, so let's do this. Let's just go into this, and we'll pause here and there to kind of like maybe comment a little bit more on some of this stuff. So this is text number 26. Krishna is now entering the city, and it says Krishna's chest. So this is now, these next couple of texts are trying to describe Krishna's beauty.
Yeah.
Krishna's chest is the abode of the goddess of fortune. His moon-like face is the drinking vessel for eyes which hanker after all that is beautiful. Isn't that an amazing sentence? I'm going to read that again. His moon-like face is the drinking vessel for eyes which hanker after all that is beautiful. Now, like the poetry sometimes in the Bhagavatam is just so powerful and profound. So his moon-like face, that means like the eyes drink, like his face is like a vessel, which is like a cup, which is filled with water that we drink. But instead of drinking water through the mouth, the eyes are drinking Krishna's beauty in. And it's moon-like. It's just beautiful. So his arms are the resting places for the administrative demigods, and his feet are the refuge of pure devotees who never talk or sing of any subject except him.
Yeah. Nice. Just briefly, the beginning of the Bhagavatam, the very first thing that mentions there is that the absolute is the source of everything. So including beauty. And the Bhagavatam is also saying that that source has a personality. And so actually, I know etymologically, Krishna, the name Krishna is divined as the all attractive, and further defined as being the reservoir of unlimited fame, opulence, beauty, all of these things. So anyway,
this is important because if we were to compare other concepts of a personal divinity, then really we don't have much else than I think the Abrahamic traditions. Like I don't think there's other and mostly in those traditions he's portrayed. I don't know when it started. I don't know actually what the portrayal is, but I mean, growing up in the Christian religion myself, he was always portrayed as like an old, isn't it? An old man or something like that?
Yeah. That's definitely the general concept.
So this is quite different. We're going to get actual very vivid description here, but not like that at all. But the ever fresh, youthful, and beauty beyond description.
Right.
Yeah.
27.
Yep.
As Krishna passed along the public road of Dwarka, his head was protected from the sunshine by a white umbrella. White feathered fans moved in semicircles, and showers of flowers fell upon the road. His yellow garments and garlands of flowers made it appear as if a dark cloud were surrounded simultaneously by sun, moon, lightning, and rainbows.
Yeah, it's really beautiful. So
yeah.
In the commentary, Prabhupada says that the sun, moon, rainbow, and lightning do not appear in the sky simultaneously. Have you ever seen any of those things, all those things all together in the sky?
No.
When there is sun, the moonlight becomes insignificant. I mean, sometimes you can see the moon there, but it's not like moonlight, right?
Right.
And if there are clouds and a rainbow, there is no manifestation of lightning. The Lord's bodily hue is just like a new monsoon cloud, considered to be like blackish, right? So Krishna's color is like blackish or blackish blue, like a monsoon cloud. Like it's not giving a specific color here, but in other places it's kind of like that, right?
Yeah.
Some kind of not black, not blue, but like a monsoon cloud. That's Krishna's color. He is compared herein to the cloud. The white umbrella over his head is compared to the sun. See, like the contrast, right? Like if this whole description is supposed to be describing Krishna as he's passing down the road, right? So there's his dark complexion and then this white, shining white umbrella. So it's like the sun in a cloud.
Right, right.
So the white umbrella over his head is compared to the sun. The movement of the bunch hair fan of flukes is compared to the moon. So here's a really interesting
Fan of flukes.
so
I don't remember actually hearing it described like that before.
I actually looked this word up
Okay,
in the
okay,
dictionary.
okay.
But it's important to note here that Srila Prabhupada throughout the Bhagavatam is using an old English.
Yeah, yeah.
And that becomes very relevant at times. This is not a relevant point. Like, so he's using the word fluke, which is kind of an old English word. But there are some places where it's very important that we keep in mind he's using Old English when it comes to understanding the philosophical point or the social comment that Prabhupada makes sometimes
Right,
throughout the Bhagavatam, or how some of the verses are translated.
right,
So we're
right.
dealing with an Old English. We always have to keep that in mind so we don't misunderstand things. And it can and has caused um, misunderstandings, not keeping that in mind. And we'll get to that eventually when those instances arise. But in terms of this one particular word, fluke,
Yeah, what does it mean?
well, there's the kind of modern meaning of something like happening by chance, right?
Right,
But
right, right.
then there's like three different older definitions of the word. I'm only going to read one of them because it's the one that applies. But this is from the Merriam-Webster, and it says so the part of an anchor that fastens to the ground. So that's one part of the word, part of the definition, and the other part is one of the lobes of a whale's tail. Okay, so you put these two things together. Is that the fan? What was it that he was saying here?
Yeah, a bunch hair.
The bunch hair is actually it's actually a tail, and that tail is anchored to a handle. And so here is a whale's tail in the dictionary definition. It's a whale's tail. So I guess it's just some kind of, basically it's a tail that's anchored to something.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Now, if nobody has seen a chamara fan or a whisk fan, they have no clue what we're describing right now, and that's fine. We'll just move on. But it's like a white whisk,
But I
and
just want, I yes, exactly. I just want to make the point that it doesn't have anything to do with a whale's tail.
no, 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 it doesn't.
It's the hair, right?
It's
Of
hair,
yeah.
hair coming from a yak, I think.
Yak's
Yeah,
tail.
yeah.
Yeah.
So
And not a yak that was killed for its hair either. Right? Just
most of them, I think these days, at least in North America, they're artificial. They're not made of a real tail, but
right, right,
they
right.
look exactly. They have the white whisk, and it's actually a really beautiful thing. And it's this, I
Yeah.
don't even, it's like a big bushy soft white
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
and you when you wave it through the air, it looks quite majestic.
Right.
And it's meant to just keep flies and things away from the
Yeah.
person that's being received. And
Yeah.
so here, Krishna is going down the street. He's got someone happily carrying an umbrella over his head, protecting him from the sun, and someone is waving this big giant whisk in case any kind of like little bugs come flying by. They'll just be wished away by this whisk. So it's all like just care of reception, right?
Yes,
But
yes.
putting all these things together, it's really quite beautiful,
Yeah.
and the whole thing is enhanced because of Krishna's own beauty. Yeah.
Just I just like to say that the one of the principles of the this culture was nonviolence. And so, and one of those details is that like no living being's life would be ended prematurely. So I
Oh, that's
just
interesting.
I feel some when I hear the whale's tail, I feel some
Yeah,
sensitivity
yeah, yeah,
arise
yeah.
in my heart.
But just because we're going to come across it eventually, there was like this thing. It's not the case today because, like, as we were just speaking about a moment ago, society was arranged differently in these times, and during these times, there was a class of people that were kshatriyas or warriors,
Mhm.
And we will find in the Bhagavatam, as we read through it, there was some kind of like hunting that these warriors would do. It wasn't the Brahmins, you know, it wasn't the average person that was allowed to do that. And there was a purpose behind it. There's no and so to your point, nothing was done
Yeah, right,
without a purpose.
right.
So I wonder though if back in those times the yaks were brought back from these warriors or something like that. I don't know, like,
Yeah. I have no idea. I
but
haven't heard anything about the details. Okay,
either
so
way,
yeah, sorry to divert from the
it's
that.
interesting. You know, it's because it's totally in connection with what we were talking about. Either way, the Bhakti teachings do not in any way um, encourage or endorse like hunting animals or anything like that in the modern day. Like
Right.
that's not the case. So, let's keep reading this. There's a little bit more beautiful description here. So, so he's going down the road. He's got the white umbrella, and there's this bunch hair thing. Then the showers of flowers are compared to the stars. So as he's walking down he's got all this happening, and people are taking flower petals, and they're like throwing these flower petals, and that's really beautiful
Yeah,
when that
yeah, it is.
happens. And
If you
so that's
haven't
it.
if you haven't seen that before in your life, that is something worth seeing.
Yeah. I was in Mayapur one time. This was in 2004, and the arrival of the Panchatattva in Mayapur, which we won't get into describing too much right now. But the point here is that there was a parade. Let's call it a parade that was coming down the road
Mhm.
towards the Mayapur temple, and it was a very festive thing. Like there was a band, there's all kinds of stuff going on. And at one point in time, we went through this area, and there was all kinds of people there, and they had flower petals to shower upon the parade. So as we walked through this, it was honestly just like there was no end to it. It was like a constant. It didn't seem like there were people throwing bunches of flowers. It just seemed like they were showering from the sky, like rain. There was just no end to it. A constant flow of
Wow.
flower petals, and it was so like beautiful. It's just hard to describe. And
The
that was that.
pale reflection in the modern day is the at concerts they shoot up like those plastic streamers or something, and then like
Right.
shine different colored lights on them, you know?
I guess so. I guess that's or at a wedding they might throw rice or throw confetti or something, right?
Yeah.
So it's some
Usually,
kind of celebratory thing, but
yeah.
nothing beats the flower petals.
No.
Yeah, they're really, really nice. So his yellow garments are compared to the rainbow. And again, it's if you can picture it like on a canvas. If you were to do a painting of this, it's all the contrasting colors. You've got Krishna's dark complexion, and you've got that white, bright umbrella, and you've got the all these flower petals flittering in the sky. And then you've got his yellow garments, which against his dark complexion, uh, were just like a rainbow stands out against the sky, right? When you see the rainbow against the sky, it's like, whoa, everybody goes, look at that, right?
Yeah.
So Krishna's garments across his body would have been like a rainbow of how they, just the beauty of it. All of these things, they okay, so let's keep on reading. Prabhupada wraps this up. So all these activities of the firmament being impossible simultaneous factors cannot be adjusted by comparison. In other words, Prabhupada is saying that this is a verse trying to describe the beauty of the situation, but it's actually not possible. All these things, they can't really be described at the same time. And the adjustment is possible only when we think of the inconceivable potency of Krishna. Krishna is all powerful, and in his presence, anything is possible. Oh, anything impossible can be made possible. So it's like, even though it's impossibly beautiful, it becomes possible to be that beautiful. I mean, it's important to keep in mind that these are descriptions of the personification of divinity, right? And as we go deeper and deeper into this, it's just consistent beauty, consistent uh like just qualities that are incomparable in every way. um But the situation created at the time of his passing on the roads of Dwarka was beautiful and could not be compared to anything else besides the description of natural phenomena. So that's why the verse is using these examples, because there's nothing, the highest you can do is nature. Try to find some way that you can describe this, that we can see in nature, because nature is otherwise the most beautiful thing, right? But it doesn't really cut it, even those examples that are coming from nature.
Right.
Yeah. Should we keep going?
Yeah, sure. That was nice though to reflect on that's the thing is, like as human beings, we have a need for beauty. Like we have a need to like be exposed to things that are beautiful, to see beautiful things. And the Bhagavatam is just full of descriptions of what was mentioned here, incomparable beauty. And it really reading things like this, it really satisfies that,
Yeah.
desire to see something beautiful. And
That's such a great point, that we have a need for beauty.
yeah.
Like, it becomes so disheartening, right? If we're somewhere where there's no beauty, especially natural beauty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just remember being downtown Montreal, and just like I we were I was down there quite a bit, but just one time noticing that there was like these six little struggling spindly trees that they had planted into the sidewalk, and that was it, in terms of natural beauty. That was like it. And it was just like, yeah, it was a little like depressing.
Yeah. I think that's a really important point. I want to, like, somehow let's come back to that. I don't see where to go with it right now, but just this whole thing, how we crave beauty, kind of like how we crave our to be connected with the divine,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And Krishna is the source of that beauty. So
yeah,
I suppose in some kind of like reflected way, our need for beauty is a reflection of that need to be close to Krishna in some way.
yeah, for sure,
Yeah.
for sure.
Hmm. So that was a good little pause, just trying to understand Krishna's beauty. Now let's get into some of the more like personal things that are going to take place here. Text 28. You want to go for it?
Okay, yeah. So these are just describing the Krishna's meeting the different members of his family, and just so I think a little bit about the interaction
And
that's
we
going
might
on.
kind of like pause, like we might we might want to just read with maybe slight pauses here and there, and then kind of like just go through it, and then reflect back on the parts that
Yeah,
we feel we want to.
yeah, sounds good.
Okay, go for it.
After entering the house of his father, he was embraced by the mothers present, and Krishna offered his obeisances unto him by placing his head at their feet. The mothers were headed by Devaki, his real mother.
It's going to be hard not to pause.
Well, that's just
Okay.
that you see that in if you go to India, that's a very cultural thing. Like they really offer respects to their elders, and even we have a friend here from India, and he grew up in a very kind of like traditional village, and on their New Year, they would get up very early in the morning, start very early in the morning, and go to the houses of all the elders in the village and like do this, pay their respects, and by actually placing their head, at their feet, and get their blessings, get their yeah, for the next year. So it's very, very cultural thing.
It is a beautiful thing. Yeah, it is
And
really
it's
beautiful.
if you're yeah, it is. And if you're in a position where you're like, if you're in kind of like a senior position, it's very like, it's also very enlivening for you in the senior position to be respected like that. And in, you know, in this culture, those who are in a senior position, either by age or knowledge or things like that, you feel, you when somebody comes to you and does something, you want to give, you feel encouraged to give whatever you have. And so it
Right.
just, it creates that atmosphere where people want to contribute to each other's, you know, well-being.
Hmm.
Whereas, you know, we have a, the Western culture has a tendency to, you know, challenge or whatnot. And we don't, I would say that because of that, we sometimes we miss the opportunity to receive something that might be very precious.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It's I got the as an early when I first was living in the ashram and was kind of trying to understand the whole culture. This was something that I really thought was really nice and really
Mm-hmm.
something that I wanted to try to imbibe. And I told the story. This was quite some time ago, I think, how when my parents came to visit me in the ashram because they were concerned about what I was doing, and I did this. I put my head on the ground at their feet,
Oh, really?
oh yeah. I did this. I won't tell the whole story right now. Um, I told it before, but it didn't go like this. It didn't go like quite as smoothly and perhaps beautifully as this moment. It was a little bit awkward and as you can understand, strange for
I'm guessing they
everybody.
were a little, yeah, I'm guessing they were a little startled.
It was a quite a moment. I remember it vividly.
The
So
the principle is some way of showing respect.
yes, that's the principle. It doesn't have to look exactly like this. So
Yeah,
they were not culturally prepared. And
yeah.
anyway, it happened. But there were, though, living in the ashram, in the community, there were some older Indian women who were, I mean, older in their like 70s, 80s, and who were, who had been steeped in a similar culture their whole life. Um, and so they used to look upon us young monks or brahmacharis living in the ashram as children, as their children, not like in a demeaning way, but like in a caring way, that
Right,
they
right.
would feel motherly towards us. And so it was only natural when seeing them to do that, to go and put our head to the floor in front of them, and just as a respect. And of course, um, if I well, like, and we would do that in the ashram too. Like that was something that we took on as part of our ashram culture. Like when we would first see each other, if I saw you, I would do that. I would put my head on the ground and offer my respects towards you, and you'd do the same back to me. And we would all do that like at least once a day, right? Pretty much.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
but the difference with the older mothers, the older Indian women, was that they were our seniors. They were very much respected. And also they were like 80 or something, right? It's not like they're going to be just going down on the floor.
Right, right, right.
But that wasn't the reason why they didn't do it though. It wasn't that because we were younger than them that they didn't touch they didn't reciprocate with the same action. But what they did instead, because they had a motherly love towards us, was that they would just put their hand on our head. They just like
Right, right.
as we'd get up, they'd put their hand on our head and kind of pat our head lovingly, and it was kind of like a blessing.
Mm-hmm,
And it was a
mm-hmm,
very warm exchange, very natural.
mm-hmm.
So just a very beautiful thing. And then we're going to see a lot of that in the Bhagavatam because
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
where it comes from. But the other thing I wanted to point out here was that Krishna does this.
Right, right.
Krishna puts his head on the ground in front of the people that he loves like this. And so this is our conception of the person of personal divinity, right? Like,
Right.
well, if we say, like, well, we don't use the word God that much because God as a word is kind of incomplete. It doesn't really describe Krishna, because the concept of God is a limited term, and it's kind of like defined in the realm of the Abrahamic. Well, like,
Yeah, definitely.
yeah,
That's the, at least in the Western conception, that's definitely the the general general idea
yeah,
that
the kind
comes
of
up.
yeah, the Abrahamic type of conceptions of God. So so one, we don't use that word so much because that understanding of God isn't exactly like
Right.
the description that we find in the Bhakti teachings. Also because it's incomplete. Like,
Right.
that
Yeah,
will
no,
become
for sure.
that will become more apparent as we go deeper into the Bhagavatam. But also, but let's just use that word for a minute. That the conception of God in here then is that, he puts his head on the ground in humbleness and love in front of those that he loves, and that he can have those relationships with, like, if we can have motherly, if like that whole, like, exchange that I was just describing, that I was having with that,
Right.
uh you know those older Indian ladies, that there was love there, and that was an experience and a relationship. But that relationship, has its source. And so I can experience that because it's present in the absolute truth. And so Krishna, if I can experience it, certainly it's present
Right.
in the supreme divinity. He
Right.
certainly has the capacity to experience that relationship as well, except when experienced by the supreme divinity Krishna, it's like, you know, I don't know, like way more,
Yeah.
right?
Uh,
And but he does this. He puts his how does this contrast, like the angry, punishing, kind of whatever image of God that most people have when they think of that word God? It's like completely the opposite. It's a very loving, humble, beautiful, powerful, but that power is in a different way. Like, not that all kinds of other power is there too, like the whole, but the point is the power of love that
mhm.
Krishna has is perhaps his most powerful feature. And that's kind of what we're
Yeah,
reading here.
and that's what I think, that's what comes out in the tradition of bhakti and in the Bhagavatam, is that actually the real interest of the absolute is to have relationship, loving relationship, and
Mhm.
with each and every living entity.
Mhm.
And you can see it. It's displayed in these places what that looks like, and
Yes.
it's very yeah, this whole conception, what you're mentioning, this whole conception of like an angry person who like hates everybody. It's just so
Hates everybody except some people.
yeah, it's just
Right.
so far off the concept, the what's being presented in the
Yeah. I like the whole,
Bhagavatam.
and I mean, and because I mean, I guess we will, like it's not just the descriptions of God that are found in modern religions that seem so off, but it's the descriptions of reality connected with that God, like the idea of eternal damnation and stuff like this. This is like
Yeah,
really,
yeah,
really, like, I don't even know how to put words to that. It's sick,
yeah. it's
basically.
yeah, it's sad,
Yeah.
and yeah, for sure.
So I think I don't know. We somehow okay, we dipped into that a little bit, like just as a contrast. We
It's
don't have to.
also,
Yeah.
yeah, it's also, you can see that the if you look at the spiritual teachers of bhakti, for them it actually, when they hear things like that, actually makes them angry, because it's such a disservice to the actual reality of things. it's such a distortion of the actual reality of things, that and their desire is for other people to experience the, the richness of what can actually be experienced. And so when they hear things like that, they actually get angry, because it's like a huge disservice to people in general.
To humanity. Yeah, that's anger properly
Right.
channeled.
Right.
Probably like, anger is a thing, right? So bhakti yogis can also, anything can be used in a
Yeah.
spiritual way, but that anger, is what does that anger cause the bhakti yogi to do? Well, that causes the bhakti yogi, or the person to try to share this knowledge more vigorously,
Right.
not to go out and punish people, like not
Yeah.
like.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So, yeah.
Okay.
Should we keep going?
Yeah. Go ahead. Um,
So, this is text number 29. The mothers, after embracing their son, sat him on their laps. Due to pure affection, milk sprang from their breasts. They were overwhelmed with delight, and the tears from their eyes were wetted, or the tears from their eyes wetted Krishna. So, I guess this is an emotion that might be difficult for a man to relate to,
right.
but it's definitely seen there in. I've seen it happen with a cow.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. I
Yeah,
saw a cow with
I
a.
think we were both there. Wasn't that in Sukayanti and
Oh, you were there. Okay, okay,
yeah, yeah,
okay, okay.
out at their in Ontario, they had a cow with a
I
calf.
just remember the cow. I don't remember you being there.
Yeah, thanks. But this cow, whenever, what was the calf, right? I don't even think it was,
whenever
but
whenever
it
the
wasn't
calf.
the cow. It wasn't the cow's calf.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
Oh,
that's what it was.
uh-huh.
And
Yeah, and it just.
whenever the cow saw the calf, milk would start dripping from the udder.
Yeah,
And it
yeah.
wasn't like because cows usually have a cycle that they that they provide milk at,
Right, right.
but they can also spontaneously at any time, and out of affection. And this cow would, and we both saw it.
Yeah, I know. It was
Just
very.
as soon as the calf started coming around. Maybe I'm
Well,
wrong. Maybe it was their calf, but I thought it wasn't their calf.
okay, okay.
I don't know.
It's also, I think it really stuck. It stuck in my mind because you also read descriptions of cows that have
Yeah.
like their milk coming from their udders just when they're feeling that like real strong love or affection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a recurring thing that's described in the Vedas, that of mothers and their children.
Yeah.
That milk starts to flow when, especially through and connected with feelings of affection.
Yeah. Okay, 30. Thereafter, Krishna entered his palaces, which were perfect to the fullest extent. His wives lived in them, and they were numbered over 16,000.
The queens of Krishna rejoiced within their minds to see their husband home after a long period abroad. The queens got up at once from their seats and meditations. As was socially customary, they covered their faces shyly and looked coyly about. So here we have, here's where we get glimpses of an older culture. That's not that
Right.
the older Vedic culture, but also in the commentary, which is quite long. This commentary is like 2 pages.
Right, right.
Prabhupada does talk about the 16,108 queens, which is a famous episode. How all these queens came to. Well, actually, there's 16,000. Yeah, 16,100. Was it there's some of these queens have individual stories,
Right.
but then there's a bulk number of 16,000. That come in one particular episode. So now, Prabhupada in the commentary, he doesn't get into all of that the storyline behind all of it, but he talks about the point, which is a challenge, which is how is it that he had 16,000 wives? Like, why, or
Or how is that possible?
how is that even possible? Like
Right.
that's only one of the questions. And Prabhupada in the commentary, he deals with the how is that possible question. So
Right. I see.
that's the cool thing about all of these stories, and that they are, you know, we take them as histories from the Bhagavatam. That you know, sometimes it's like you know, you just have to pause because there's so much going on that is unfamiliar or far out, that you know, kind of trying to figure out how to think about it. And as that this is the same thing that's been going on for thousands of years. Like even great sages will pause on these
Right. Right.
on these episodes or these pastimes, and they will identify the important questions,
Right. Right.
and then they will unpack them.
Right.
And so then we get the real like value that's actually packed into these Sanskrit texts. Like, what is the deep meaning behind what's taking place here? And so that's the thing about the Bhakti tradition and culture, is it's rich with the scholarly acharyas, you know, the great realized masters of the past who have spent their lives meditating deeply and going into these pastimes and bringing out the jewels so
Mm-hmm,
that we
mm-hmm.
can like understand what's important here. So Prabhupada is just dealing with one question in the commentary, which is that how is it even possible? And he mentions that, you know, we won't read the whole thing; it's too long. But in essence, I mean, it's too long for how much time we have. But we spoke last week about how there are different varieties of relationships that we can have with the divine, right? We're all into bhakti right now. So we're talking about like Krishna's mothers and now his queens. And like these are the queens are that conjugal relationship, that intimate love.
Right.
So this is within the realm of bhakti. But we, you know, a person doesn't have to go into the realm of bhakti to have a relationship with the divine. Last week we spoke about the super soul, Paramatma,
Right.
for example. So the fact is that Krishna resides in everyone's heart as Paramatma, all living entities. Prabhupada makes the point in the commentary, he married only 16,000 wives. It's like he could marry or have that relationship of conjugal love with unlimited amount of souls.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah,
From the point of the bhakti tradition, the absolute has a relationship. Like there is a relationship between the absolute and every living entity.
yes.
And then those relationships can be within different types of moods, which is like either it's with like uh, between lovers or parents or friends or servants and master, like that. And so, and those are all things we experience. But yeah, that's the I think that's the important point, is that every living entity has a relationship with the absolute. That's the with the bhakti tradition. And even those of us who don't really, it's not really clear what that actually, if you, in the Bhagavad Gita, it says that we are actually relating with the absolute in some way. And based on how we relate, then the absolute relates with us in a particular way. So these are living entities that they want to have a very personal relationship with the absolute. And so the absolute,
Mm-hmm.
Krishna, he reciprocates
Their
with them.
love, they've cultivated their love to such a point where it's become intimate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so in order to reciprocate with that intimacy, a relationship has to manifest. What does that relationship look like?
Yeah.
Well, here, these particular relationships are in the form of like husband and wife.
Right. Right.
And that's also present in other traditions, you know, a little bit, not maybe
A
not as
little bit.
developed.
Yeah.
Like
If you look into Christianity, I know like my my brother and my aunt, and they studied a lot of the more kind of, I guess you would call them esoteric parts of Christianity, but you find all of these relationships in different, all, I think all religious traditions, actually, if you look into them, you'll find all these things described. It's just not like so mainstream.
Yes. Now that we've bashed Christianity, we can. But in those teachings, there's some good stuff. There's some
Yeah,
good stuff too. Like I think that there are some traditions of nuns who used to wear a ring
right,
because
right.
they considered themselves married to Jesus. Now, I don't know if that mood of love is conjugal. I actually never researched that, or I don't know anything about it, but the concept is there. I don't know
There's
exactly what.
yeah, right, right.
Yeah.
I also I want to bring up the point here that, like, we as individuals, like I was saying, we relate with the absolute in some way, and so the absolute, reciprocates with how we're relating.
Yeah.
So even, for instance, like from the Bhakti tradition, the teachers would say that even those who are denying the existence of a spiritual absolute, personality or divinity in any way, the absolute reciprocates by making it, making their lives in such a way that it reinforces their concept.
Right.
So even from the Bhakti tradition, even in those circumstances, there's a relationship going on, but it's just very one way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I also wanted to bring up the point that what we're reading about here is also from the position of the absolute. These are actually the relationships that he likes to be engaged in. That's what
Yes.
also the Bhakti tradition is saying. So it's not just what we want, like the living entity wants from our side, but also like what is it from the side of the absolute that he wants.
Absolutely. And not only, let's just add to that a little bit that what we're seeing is what's been manifested in our world. When Krishna comes like this, he manifests these relationships in our world so that we can see them, hear
Right,
about them, and
right,
be like, are attracted to them. But what's the point of getting attracted to them? Because they attract us to a different realm of relationship, a different world, actually,
right,
like a spiritual realm where Krishna has where there's unlimited relationships like this going on in that place. Like the point the point is that our minds become attracted away from like the material relationships of this world, and our mind becomes attracted to the potential of spiritual relationships, and ultimately that leads the soul to transcend this world and enter the spiritual realm.
right, right,
But where in that realm Krishna, it displays all of these relationships, like without any it's just full on, like beyond what even we can comprehend, like the levels of emotion and the levels of devotion, and the exchanges. They have such nuances in the spiritual realm that they're actually quite difficult for those of us who still have material concepts to even relate to.
right,
And that's why I mean, one of the reasons why we don't hear that much about Radha. Like we're talking about Krishna and the personal form of divinity. We're all, we're always talking about Krishna and his potencies and the relationships we can have with him. But Krishna is like, divinity is not just masculine per
masculine.
se, it's also
Yeah,
feminine.
yeah,
But those relationships are so, and in fact, in some places it's described that Radha is even more powerful than Krishna,
right,
because she attracts, like her beauty and her love is so powerful that it even attracts Krishna. Like her, she's so powerful that she, anyway, they see I can even talk about it. I'm only taking advantage of it at the moment because it occurred to me that tomorrow is Radhastami. It's a day that Radha is celebrated,
right,
in the
right,
Bhakti
right.
tradition. So it's just an opportune moment. but we don't hear much about Radha in the Bhagavatam. Uh, we begin to hear about her in the 10th canto to some degree, but a lot has to happen in terms of our spiritual understanding before we can approach an understanding of Radha. So therefore, we're like Krishna, because Radha's relationships and I don't even know how to talk about Radha. What can I say? I'm so unqualified. I don't even know. But
the thing, yeah, the thing is yeah, from I think from a philosophical point of view, if you take the absolute masculine as being Krishna, then the absolute feminine is Radharani.
yeah,
And she's the personality that can fully reciprocate with Krishna, who has in his unlimitedly reciprocate with his unlimited desires. And so the relationship is essentially perfect, which is like in our conception, perfection, just like
yeah,
what's perfection, but that's actually when you enter into spiritual relationship, that's what is being, you know, presented as possible, is the perfection of relationships, and the result of that being like complete satisfaction of the heart, of the self.
yeah. And to hear about some of those moods of devotion that are present in such a pure way, like a lot of that comes after getting through the Bhagavatam, and some of those literatures are available for us as well, like say like the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, right? Like the Nectar of Devotion. It does describe a lot of those very spiritual and transcendental moods that include emotions that are exchanged with Radha,
Right.
between Radha and Krishna. So we're not going to hear much about Radha for some time, but we are hearing about, I guess it's a little bit difficult to approach that topic right now. But I'm glad that we at least mentioned Radha,
Yeah,
because tomorrow's a big day in the
Bhakti tradition.
in the Bhakti tradition. Yeah, it's a big celebration about Radharani.
Yeah, I was also thinking just in terms of uh the relationship, like the relationships you mentioned about like Krishna, he displays these things. And it's just like, not only we were talking earlier about the beauty, how we have a need for beauty, but we also have this kind of like need for connection with other people. And when you see like how Krishna behaves, and his associates, how they all like interact, personally, when I've read some of these things, it's like amazing. Like it's just so attractive for the mind.
Yeah,
It's like we don't always have experience, or never have experience of like these kind of like really like loving exchanges. Usually I was just reading this the other day. In our experience, either it's all suffering, like our exchanges with others can be all suffering, that's one option, or suffering mixed with some pleasure, you know some pain, some pleasure. I think that's a pretty common one. And then the other option is it's called relative pleasure, which means that there's just no pain going on. So it's like it's just this feeling of like, there's a feeling of happiness there, because it's like a relief that there's, at least right now, there's no pain happening. So
your life sounds pretty rough, Riyadh. Uh, but that's basically like,
isn't
in
it?
order
Is
in,
it? I
in, or-
mean, I
in
don't
order to
know about you.
understand that,
Yeah.
there is like it's like through the eyes of Gyan.
Yeah.
Like it's
No, but I don't know about you, but personally, I'm married,
uh-huh.
and there's a lot of there's a lot of happiness, and there's also, it can be, like a big, struggle sometimes. So it's like, both are there.
Right. It's not there's not pure happiness is pure it isn't to be
Yeah,
found, you could say. Pure
yeah,
like
yeah. And
just
that's
based
what,
on them.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
that's what Bhakti or the Bhagavatam is presenting, and Krishna is showing, like, is
Yes.
showing relationships that actually, that is what's going on. It's just pure, pure experience of happiness.
Yes, yes. I really like this it comes back to the beauty in the relationships that we see when we're hearing about these things, that the way that Krishna is engaging with people, and the relationships are just so intensely beautiful. And this made me think of the original point that you started off with, how we crave beauty.
Right.
And so, like, it's another satisfying thing. Like, even if we don't understand it, even if it
Right.
doesn't make like philosophical sense at the moment or whatever, it's still beautiful, and it's
Right.
still satisfying to hear about
Right.
it. And
Right.
and because of that, it's actually purifying.
Right. Right.
So this idea that we crave beauty, and Krishna satisfies that craving like anything.
Again, again and again.
Yeah, again and again in so many different ways.
Yeah.
Visually, here's relationship wise, and we'll see all through. That's really
Yeah.
I think that's a big takeaway for today.
Hmm.
Danlea wrote in the chat here a good point, that Radha is Krishna's what was it? Inner potency. Yeah, just wanted to just mention that too. The energy and the energetic. Anyway, Brihad, that was a good place to stop, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, that was really nice. I thought we were gonna breeze through it, but there was just too much beauty. We had to stop and smell the roses, as the all right, so we'll see you next week.
Thank you.